Fu Xuan is going to be releasing next week, and from what we know so far, she's shaping up to be an amazing sustain character. But, it's making people wonder, since the current best sustain character in the game is Luocha, is Fu Xuan going to end up being better than Luocha? So today, I'm going to discuss between the two of them what I think is going to end up happening. And I do, urge you all to make it to the end of the video, because I will end off with my thoughts on if I think Fu Xuan will be better than Luocha. So, starting out with what Luocha does and what he brings to the table, and as I've said on the channel multiple times by now, I do think Luocha is still the best character in Honkai Star Rail, just based off of the value he provides compared to every other character in the game. So, he is a really strong healer, and unlike every other healer in the game, he's able to keep the entire team healed passively, where he doesn't have to really use his skill points unless you're in a really awful situation. And he does this by pairing his Abyss Field, which will activate for 2 turns whenever, 2 of Luocha's turns whenever he uses either his skill or his ultimate twice, as well as his skill automatically activating every 2 turns whenever whenever allies are below 50% HP. And it does give them a very nice heal, which is super nice because, from what I've seen from Luocha gameplay, you don't really need to use his skill that much, if at all, going out of your way to use skill points. So because of just the auto skill activation, plus the Abyss Field, and also his skill gives a ridiculous amount of energy for his ultimate. So because of that, he ends up being very skill point positive, and I think that's so beneficial, especially with how some of these characters are now, especially in Imbibitor Lunae, with his mass amount of skill point usage. And then also, one of the best parts about Luocha is that his ultimate will remove buffs from the enemies, which is also extremely nice. And also him having cleanse on his skill as well is also really good. But now, to move into what we know so far about Fu Xuan. So, Fu Xuan, unlike Luocha, is a preservation character. So that is definitely an important difference to keep in mind, because she's not focused on healing. But from what we know so far about her, she will take a % of her allies' damage onto herself. So instead of your team taking a bunch of damage, they'll only take a little bit, while Fu Xuan will take most of the damage. And while she's doing this, she is able to increase her HP and crit rate for herself and her entire team, which is very nice. And this all comes from her skill, which also does last for multiple turns. So similarly to Luocha, she doesn't use many skill points, which is also really good for how some of these characters are. And I mean, just a lot of teams in general, if you're running if you're running Bronya, if you're running Asta for your supports, or if you're running those more skill point intensive DPSs like Imbibitor Lunae and Seele, having characters that don't need to use as many skill points to be on the team is very helpful as well. And Fu Xuan does also have other sustain mechanics in her kit, being able to heal herself at specific points when her HP is low. So with her, and also her being a preservation character, you are probably going to have a lot of defense built into her. So she is going to be able to take the damage that she is supposed to take very well. So now we get to the main question of the video: who do I think will be better in Honkai Star Rail, whether it's Luocha or Fu Xuan? So I do think, and I'll give my full thoughts on this once we've had more time to use Fu Xuan, test her out, and stuff like that. But just based on her info compared to my thoughts of Luocha, I do think that while both these characters are going to be very good, I do think Fu Xuan definitely has the potential to be a bit better than Luocha is. I do think once I, do my 1.3 tier list towards the end of the version, I might end up having Fu Xuan at number 1 and Luocha at number 2. And I think that this is because both of them have very strong ways to sustain their teams. With Luocha being able to keep characters passively healed, whereas Fu Xuan is able to just sort of soak up a lot of the damage that the allies would be taking, especially if you're running her with Nihility, Harmony, those kind of characters that are very squishy and aren't able to really take hits that well. Fu Xuan is very good with that. But I think the thing that makes me think that Fu Xuan will end up being better is that not only does she apply, defensive benefits similarly to Luocha for the entire team, but she also has the offensive benefit of increased crit rate. And I think this is going to be very good too for people who are going to pull for Fu Xuan and run the Mono Quantum team, which I will have a separate video going out for that within the next week or so. But that team is going to be very strong, and being able to increase the crit rate of your main DPS for that team being either Xingque or Seele is going to be amazing. And also just making them take less damage will also be very good. So the one thing I want to point out about Fu Xuan though, before we end off, is people might be wondering like, but wait, Luocha has cleanse, but Fu Xuan doesn't have a way to cleanse her allies, and that's definitely a very valid criticism, because with the way that Memory of Chaos is, with the way that a lot of like the newer enemies and like endgame stuff is, cleanse is super important. And my response to people wondering about cleanse for Fu Xuan is that it's perfectly fine to also run a healer with Fu Xuan. Like she does have a little bit of like healing stuff in her kit, but there's really no reason why anyone should feel like they shouldn't run a healer just because she's a preservation. And you're gonna have a very strong healer on her banner as well in Lynx. And Lynx will have an AoE cleanse for the entire team. So because of that, that's just gonna increase Fu Xuan's survivability and make her even better. And the fact that Lynx is coming out on her banner is also amazing. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you all think about Fu Xuan. And, if you think that she'll end up being better than Luocha. I definitely will revisit this once Fu Xuan's been out for a little bit. But with that, everyone, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, definitely be sure to hit the like button, comment, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell. But with that, I will see you all next time.